head pass to Hayward. Jazz get into a half-court set with 5:45 left. Hayward right down the middle of the lane, loops it over the rim and in, got hit in the eye, no call. 25 points for Gordon.
This is Gordon Hayward. We are ready to tip it off. Are you? Let's do this.
Good morning. It's a brief one this morning. I've got a bunch of events I've got to head to today, so we'll just hang out, have a cup of coffee, review a few things about the NBA 5, and look at what's fair to expect out of the defense. It's all coming up on today's edition of Tip Off. Pow. Hope everyone is well. This is probably the length we should usually have for these podcasts. It'll be about a 15-minute-er, and you probably all will take more of it. And I should learn that if I should condense what I do in actually a way in which you can all appreciate it, and then move on with your day rather than kind of my long-winded blathering that you usually get. So maybe we'll find out that this is a better way for me to do it, or a correct way to do it. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, quick note. Ian Clark hosted a really cool Special Olympics event yesterday. Rodney Hood went down to Provo and spent some time. He's just a great kid. Tweeted out what a nice time he thought he had with everyone afterwards. And so I think everybody's getting to know that that's a guy that you can certainly enjoy and root for. Hopefully that foot will get better. He was still in the boot yesterday, and I'm not sure that when it's coming along. That's just a tough one, and will often cause you to be out for quite a while. So we'll see. All right, let's get right to it. Let's hit the NBA 5.
Hi, Jazz Nation. This is Alec Burks. Thanks for being the best fans in the NBA.
Thank you, Alec. NBA 5 to start it off. Another great night. Gosh, it feels like any night we don't play, it's a great night of the NBA. And then I remember all of our games are close and realize that it's probably a great night of the NBA every time we do play also. Cleveland loses to Denver. You know, we can overdo it every single time Cleveland loses, but the only thing that's really different between what's going on with Cleveland and Miami from when Miami went through this and didn't win a whole lot early on in there when they first had LeBron, Wade, and Bosh together, is they were holding teams under 100 points and losing. They couldn't figure out where they all were on the floor together offensively. This team is good offensively and is because they're just so talented, but they are allowing over 100 points a game. And I think you got to ask yourself whether or not you really think this group is ever going to want to defend and whether they have the makeup to defend. I'm not sure Kevin Love can defend, and I'm not sure Kyrie Irving's willing to defend. I think Kyrie Irving might be Stephon Marbury. So that's the only one where I would be a little bit more concerned with where Cleveland stands today than where Miami was. And frankly, Chicago yesterday went into L.A. without Derrick Rose and without Pau Gasol and crushed them. Just crushed them, demoralized the Clippers a little bit, which gets to be interesting about where the Clippers are as a team. They're 5-4, but Chicago goes to 8-3 on their circus road trip. We get them on this road trip, but they outscored the Clippers 31-14 in the third quarter last night. And if you watch that one, they just put the clamps down, and the Clippers didn't have an answer. And again, the other part is Dunleavy 19, Gibson 20, Noah 11, 22 for Butler, who was great last night. Holy smokes, was Jimmy Butler good. Jimmy Butler was the guy. They played him 45 minutes last night. He had 22 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists. He was the man. They just went to him, and he carried it. And then McDermott didn't do much, but Mirotic had 12, plus Heinrich's 14. So great balance without Derrick Rose and Pau Gasol. Really a stunningly, impressively deep team. And Blake had an okay day and opened up pretty well, and then just got quiet. And the Clippers, the thing on the Clippers is, remember last year their starting lineup was about as good as any lineup in the NBA. This year their starting lineups are bad. Starting lineup last night was minus 11. They don't seem to have those answers coming off the bench right now. Again, we're getting into a fine line where it's okay. It's really really early and still but you also got a 10-game stretch to open the season. The only data we have, and you're 5-4. And now you're suddenly heading on a long East Coast road trip if you're the Clippers, and you're suddenly staring at the possibility of being below 500 10 games into a season. That's an unusual thing. They play at Orlando, at Miami, at Memphis, at Charlotte, at Detroit, at Houston, and at Utah. We play the Clippers on November 29th on the back end of a road trip they leave on today, where they will play Orlando, Miami, Memphis, Charlotte, Detroit, Houston, and then us on the back end of a back-to-back there. Now, we can get them on that one. Chicago has a similar run. We are getting, when the schedule came out, we had the best schedule in the NBA. We're catching more teams nights where they've played and were rested. The Bulls played the Clippers yesterday. They get a few days off, play in Sacramento, then play the Blazers, get a few days off and come and play us, and then play the Nuggets. Then they go to Boston. They may stop at home between then, and to Brooklyn before they wrap up their long road trip. Man, that's a mammoth one. Bulls will actually have had 2 days off before we get them. Elsewhere, Memphis gets Houston on the back end of a back-to-back, which is the only reason I'm not going to make some huge declarative statement. But I loved Memphis when the year started, and I thought everybody had kind of forgotten about them, and that's proving to be true. They're 10-1. They're the best team in the NBA right now. And Quincy Pondexter and Vince Carter are making for a nice addition to an already stalwart team, and Marc Gasol is the subtle superstar, and they crushed them last night. Houston came out tired, I think, and fell behind by 16 at the end of one, and we were down 23 in the first half by the time you could really dig into that one. Dallas is getting kind of silly. Dallas last night did it again. 67 first-half points for the Dallas Mavericks last night. It's amazing. They beat Charlotte, and Charlotte's got an interesting one going on. Marvin Williams has started all 11 games this year, has played 270 minutes plus, has not taken a free throw. Marvin Williams has not taken a single free throw all season. Al Jefferson's not taking very many either. He's at 4 a game. So you couple those two things together, and it's pretty ugly. That is one of the worst constructed teams that I've ever seen. Just one bad offensive player next to another bad offensive player, inefficient offensive player, and somehow thinking they can get it done. Boston fully collapsed last night, and Phoenix got a big win, 118-114. Boston just threw the ball all over the gym in the final few minutes. Now, a little stunning. For all the talk I hear about what a great coach Brad Stevens is, and I don't know enough to know whether he is or not a great coach, but that was pretty bad execution late in the game in every regard by Boston last night. 2 fatal turnovers in the final 2 minutes of the game last night allowed Bledsoe, and I think Bledsoe got a steal and maybe Morris got the other steal, and let him go fast break dunk layups the other way, and cost Boston the game. It's on a Rajon Rondo led team, but somehow the ball's not in Rondo's hands down the stretch. Avery Bradley threw it a tie game, 32 seconds left. Bradley throws a cross-court pass away above the free throw line, turnover. Bledsoe gets the layup and scores. Then the other one was Sullinger with 1:17 left. Morris got the steal, and I think Bledsoe got the layup in a 1-point Boston lead. So in the final minute 30, they threw away twice fatal turnovers. Warriors, we play the Warriors coming up. They're starting 5 so far this year in 109 minutes. The Warriors starting 5's effective field goal percentage is 65.1% while they're on the floor. Stunning. 65.1% for their starting lineup while they're on the floor. Absolutely amazing numbers right there. That is your NBA 5.
This is Rudy Gobert, and you are locked on Jazz.
Thank you, Rudy. All right, few things. I did some research last night trying to figure out. We haven't made the defensive jump statistically yet. And so I went and found, and I'm talking from like way back. Like we're talking Larry Brown, Doug Collins back. I went and looked to see when. Now this research has got some problems. I was preparing for a game, and so I couldn't do the full Monty on this one. Here's the concept that I went with was looking at coaching changes that existed and where there were big defensive swings eventually. And what I discovered were that I found 16 times. Now, think about how many coaching changes there have been. Not all of them needed defensive changes, but 16 times where there have been a significant defensive improvement directly after a coaching change. Of those 16, only 3 of them took the big jump in year 1. 5 of them improved in year 1 and then took the jump in year 2. 6 of them stayed the same in year 1 and improved in year 2. And 2 teams kind of muddled around year 2, got a little better year 2, and jumped year 3. But if you look at, for example, Larry Drew took over in Atlanta, and he took a team's defensive rating was 106.7. In year 1, they were 107. The next year, they went to 101.2 in year 2. Byron Scott took over in New Jersey many, many years ago. 106, next year 105.5, the next year 99.5. Now in that case, he got Jason Kidd for Stephon Marbury. Larry Brown took over Charlotte many, many years back. They were 109.4. They went to 106.1, pretty good improvement. Then they really jumped and went to 102.8. So that would classify as one of the 5 that had improvement year 1 and really jumped year 2. Even Thibodeau took his biggest jump in year 2. Mike Brown, known for a lot of things, but one thing that's known as he's a good defensive coach, took over Cleveland team 105.7, year 2 105.4, in year 1 105.4, and the next year 101.3. And so you run down this. Doug Collins in 96, 97 was a year 1 improvement. Steve Clifford last year was a year 1 improvement. Mark Jackson in Golden State was a year 2 improvement with a huge jump year 3. Frank Vogel in Indiana, who's kind of the model, went from a 106. He picked up this team halfway through, so it's a little unfair, but he goes 106 to 103 to 99.8. So he's a year 1 improvement, year 2 big jump. Vinny Del Negro, 110 to 108 to 106 to 103 over 3 years. And that one's, I think, worth noting, and so is the Mark Jackson Warrior one, because there's something to taking a team over that's a 110 plus, right? Quinn's taking over a team with us that's a 110 plus. That's about as bad a defensive team as you get. In Seattle, George Karl took over a 108.8 team, got it to 104.9, year 2, 101.5. Stan Van Gundy was a great coach, took over a 104.1, actually went up to 105.5, and then the next year, 101.9. So you can see that year 2 seems to be, Doug Collins, I have in Larry Brown, Philadelphia. I mean, there's a few things I think are worth noting that coaching changes, I'll bet you, don't lead to defensive change very often. The next step of this research would be twofold. Look at all the teams that were over 110 defensively and how many years after you break over that number, because that's getting pretty bad. Does it take before you become good defensively? I think that would be the next one I should look at. And then the other one, frankly, is, there probably should be a little bit of a look at bad defensive teams that get a new coach. So define anything that's, 108 or more as a bad defensive team that gets a new coach, and then decide to see how many of those actually have defensive improvement right away. I think more often than not what you can find out is you have to have personnel change. So I think we're all 10 games in and we're looking, and I even get the question, why isn't the defense improved yet? Well, I think what we just learned is it's a process. It's a multi-year process, not a multi-parts of the season. Sure, you could go grab every 10 games and say, I'd like to see improvement, but that's a pretty, you could get Philadelphia in one of those 10 games, you'll get that improvement. Also, schedule changes, road game schedule changes. I think that maybe the better answer is every 20 games you see some sort of improvement, but offense improves as the season goes on, which would be another caveat you got to keep a little bit of an eye on there with how things look. So sure, we need to get better defensively, but I also think we're probably should be aware that this is not the easiest process. That was eye-opening to me. That first off, I was surprised how few teams had defensive jumps. How often I looked at it and I was like, oh wow, there's no defensive jump that's taking place here. From one coaching change to the other. I mean, I went back to Doug Collins and Larry Brown on a bunch of these things, and I came up with 16 of them. A few other notes for you. Enes Kanter's mid-range game right now, he is one of 4 players in the NBA that have shot at least 20 mid-range shots that are shooting over 60%. Dirk Nowitzki, Luke Ridenour, and Otto Porter. And then finally, tonight's game, pretty interesting, contrasting where these two teams are. Oklahoma City, with their defensive foundation built with Ron Adams many years ago, are one of the best defensive teams in the league. So right now, the Jazz are 10th offensively and 28th defensively. Flip Oklahoma City around. They're 11th defensively, 29th offensively. They are 27th in the league in effective field goal percentage. We're 25th defensively in effective field goal percentage. We're 8th in shooting effective field goal percentage. They're 6th in defending it. We're really almost the exact same when you look at where they're. They can't score without Serge Ibaka. We can't score without Gordon Hayward right now. So really, two teams that come in almost exact opposites to how they play. Both very slow-paced. Neither teams are forcing turnovers. Both are turning it over at a similar rate. So that's kind of where things stand tonight. And that wraps up a shortened edition of Tip-Off. Maybe you liked it a little less of me. Hope you have a good one. Enjoy yourself. Sorry, I have Lions for Better Utah breakfast this morning, shoot around, getting the kids to school, all those things. So had to jam this in short and fast. See ya.